If everybody could take their seats, we're going to get started in a few minutes here.
Good evening, everyone. Please take your seats. I would like to call this special meeting with the CPC and the monitors to order. I'm going to conduct a roll call of CPC commissioners present. Co-Chair Adams. Present. Commissioner Chandra Benito. Present. Commissioner Charles Donaldson. Commissioner Alana Garrett-Ferguson. Commissioner Kyle Early. Commissioner Kate Kennedy. Commissioner James Chura, Commissioner Adriana Rodriguez, Commissioner Jan Ridgway, Commissioner Terry Wong, Commissioner Pete Van Leer, Commissioner Greg Reeves, and I am currently present, Sharina Zayed. So that is complete. I'll hand the floor to our interim executive director, Jason Goodrich.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Tri-C. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight and thank the monitor for agreeing to and his team to co-host this evening and allow the community to come in and interact both with the monitoring team and with the Community Police Commission in the same environment at the same time. For those of you, the faces who've been here for a long time, they know when the consent decree started, and even before that in 2014, Jerry Sue Thornton Center in Tri-C was gracious enough to host us at the beginning of all this. So it's been a long time that we've been in this room. I have been leading the staff of the CPC since 2017 as the first executive director for this commission. And I've watched us come a long way over those years. When I started, it was we were on the second or third semi-annual report, and here we are about to present on the 15th. So I appreciate that the community is still here and still involved with this process, this very important process, the consent decree in the city of Cleveland. So without going too far into more detail about that, because we're going to talk a tremendous amount about the consent decree and the commission tonight, I want to introduce the monitor who is going to be giving you the initial report out on the 15th Semiannual report that he and his team have created. Our current monitor is Carl Racine, and he is a partner at Hogan Lovells. From 2015 to 2023, Racine served as the first elected and independent Attorney General for the District of Columbia, manning an agency of over 700 attorneys and professionals. As the Attorney General, Racine worked to build an independent office focused on serving the public interest. He prioritized data-driven juvenile justice reform, introduced measures to advance democracy, and took legal action to protect affordable housing. As the chief legal officer for the District of Columbia, Racine defended the city in court and used the law to serve the most vulnerable. Racine represented 3 city agencies were the subject of receivership and decades-long consent decrees enforced in federal court. He helped to end mandatory shackling of juveniles appearing before D.C. Superior Court and led the way to increased options for the rehabilitation of low-risk juvenile offenders. Mr. Racine was responsible for defending D.C. Metropolitan Police Department on issues related to use of force, de-escalation, training, and search and seizure practices, and served for 8 years in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in the district. If that wasn't enough, prior to being Attorney General, he was the first African-American managing partner of a top 100 law firm, associate White House counsel during the Clinton administration, and a public defender. So clearly, we are very lucky to have him here monitoring our consent decree, and I'm happy to welcome and honored to give that introduction of him. Mr. Racine. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jason, if I can go by the first name here. You know, a lot was said about stuff that happened, in the past in regards to my professional career. I am razor focused, as well as my team, who I'm going to introduce, on the consent decree. We represent the consent decree. We work for the Honorable Judge Solomon Oliver II, Jr., excuse me, and he reminds us every day that we represent the consent decree. This has been styled as a co-hosting event. I want to be crystal clear. We represent the consent decree. We're not partial to any entity in the city. We're partial to the consent decree. And so, please know, notwithstanding co-host terminology, we get that the CPC is an independent agency of the city, part of the city of Cleveland, of course. There are other independent agencies in Cleveland, part of the city government, of course. And there, of course, is the city council. And there, of course, is the executive, that's the mayor. And there's, of course, the Cleveland Department of Police. And there's the community. And after all, that's why we're here. Because it's the community that has been steadfast, which is properly stubborn and relentless around making sure that the city devotes sincere resources, training, and the like to enhance constitutional policing. So I'm honored to be here and certainly recognize all the commission members for the invitation to be here. I think it's important for people to know that we don't operate in a silo. We had a really outstanding team here. Unless I'm blank out, because that happens sometimes, you get tired, right? I'll introduce them and ask you to stand. Stephanie Yanakora is tending to a client matter right now. She's the deputy monitor. Extraordinarily fortunate to have her. The so-called chief of staff of the monitoring team is, I call her the CEO of the monitoring team. That's Abby Wilhelm. I'm going to leave you for last, Mr. C. We have several sworn law enforcement officers, former sworn law enforcement officers on the team that provide extraordinary insight. And one is here today, Tammy Hooper. There you go. Right? My colleague at Hogan Lovells, Courtney Caruso, extremely knowledgeable about CIT. And actually worked with Dr. Anderson on the Ferguson consent decree matter. Victor Ruiz, community. And last but not least, of course, he sees it all. Mr. Charles C. I did not recognize the Department of Justice, who actually, I'm going to say the community first, then the Department of Justice investigated, indicated, where it was going. This is really, really important. The city of Cleveland entered into a settlement agreement called a consent decree with the Department of Justice. I just wanted to recognize the Department of Justice is in the back row. Michelle Heyer, Jonathan, I'm just forgetting your last name right quick. Jackson. I don't know if you have any other colleagues here. Okay. Sorry about that, Jackson. Oh. I have to note the presence, and we really appreciate it. The members, who serve every day. So much respect for the need and what you are seeking to accomplish for the community. Period. Okay. I'm disappointed. There are a lot of drinks of water, potato chips, and chocolate, and no one went to get any. Please, there you go. It's okay. Go get water. I'm going to take a 30-second break, okay? Get yourself some water, some chips, some chocolate, please. There you go. We need to have a representative of each table go grab something. Carlos, come on, man. Okay, all good. I got the letter right. That's the worst thing. Good deal. We'll get started in call it 30 seconds, and then I'll reconvene. Okay. Well, great. Happy that folks went ahead and got water and the like. I'm going to be referring to my notes from time to time because I really want to get it right. I had mentioned that the deputy monitor was working on other client stuff. She was out of the hall, and that's Stephanie Anacora, who is doing extraordinary work. Okay. So good afternoon, members of the community of Cleveland and commission members and everyone who's here today. My team and I are here to update the public on the work that has been conducted over the time period January 1 through June 30th, 2024. That's called, the 15th Semiannual Report. Let me say a couple things about that. The time period January 1 to June 30 is it's 5 months ago. We've already had a court hearing to talk about this. We testify tomorrow before the City Council. There have been news reports about this, which I know this is a very engaged community here. And so I think that with limited time that we have, it's probably better to not focus retrospectively on a time period that has since passed. You should feel free, however, to ask questions about that. But I'll just touch on a few items. First, as you've likely heard at our status conference, the parties, that's the Department of Justice and the City of Cleveland, the parties have established 3 priorities for the year 2024. And they are crisis intervention, use of force, and search and seizure. Those are areas of the consent decree that consume many paragraphs of the consent decree. Those 3 areas have been the focus of basically the city's work, DOJ's work, and the monitoring team's work. We are, in fact, in process of assessing those 3 areas. They are at different points in the progress to conclusion. You'll hear more about that and certainly able to answer questions that you might ask. But you'll hear more about that on the next, 16th Semiannual report. But just want you to know those were the priorities. And again, 3 assessments ongoing. The first time there have been assessments of areas of this sort. Sure. Crisis intervention, use of force, and search and seizure. As part of establishing those priorities, the parties have had, I don't know, a lot of meetings. And what we've decided to do, and I think it's been working, well, is we've established working groups on these priorities that involve the Department of Justice, the City of Cleveland, usually represented ably by the Police Accountability Team, PAT, and of course, us. Back to the assessments. The formal assessments are deeper than the semi-annual review of the consent decree. They are, intense review of data, documents, statistics, all kinds of stuff. And so really it's the assessments that are going to give us a better indication of where we stand on the road to progress. Let me just say we had 50 meetings in 6 months on the priority areas. We talked about a lot of things, including the CPC, OPS, access to documents, and multiple issues around the consent decree. This is I've got down here in my notes, 4th visit in 2024, but it's actually our 5th visit of 2024. And for the record, every single person who's not from here loves it here. You have a special community, even as progress has to be made all the time. The number one thing, in my opinion, as the monitor, and I think the team shares this, that occurred during that 6-month time period is that the Honorable Judge Solomon Oliver Jr. held 9 court hearings, some in person, some telephonic. Most of those hearings related to issues concerning the monitoring team and the Department of Justice's access to documents, data, and materials so that the monitoring team could do its job. The judge made it very clear that the city had to provide documents, materials, and access to database pursuant to the consent decree, the settlement, and they had to do it now. And I have to tell you, largely, they've done that. So credit to the Honorable Judge, credit to the city in these areas for following the order. Thank you. I failed to acknowledge an important player, a group of folks in the city who are led by Dr. Anderson and the police accountability team. Dr. Anderson started alone. Pat, would you please raise your hand? Let me just say, that is the job of being the police accountability team is arduous, hard, okay? And like almost seemingly never ending. And who are we kidding? And this, like any thing that has to do with policing, sometimes it gets, a little bit tough. And politics and other things and real disagreements and all that. But let me make clear, Dr. Anderson was doing this alone for how many months, Dr. Anderson? For a year. I'm really happy and proud to say that the monitoring team advocated vigorously and consistently for funding so that Dr. Anderson could actually do the job. So sorry for not acknowledging that. I think there are council members here as well. Madam Council Member, thank you for joining. We'll see you tomorrow, I hope. Friendly question would be appreciated. All right. Before I go, I just want to say something again about the assessments, because, we've had a peek into what's going on, and particularly in the CIT area. Our peek, without going too far, is, because it's not done, is that there's notable progress. The other areas are a little bit behind in the pace of where we're going because of how we, got started. And we don't really have enough information around search and seizure to tell you how that's going. With respect to use of force, the early indications of the assessment is that there is serious progress. So that's a sneak peek, like looking in an oven when the turkey's not yet cooked, okay? But that's what it's showing. Setting expectations, there may not be a passing of all assessments. There may be a passing of one, two, or all. We don't know. To the extent that something doesn't pass an area, I would urge the community to look at this as an opportunity to dig in on what needs to be done in that area. That's really the point of the assessment. Okay. Before I go to questions, because I think really that's why we're here, to engage in conversation, I do want to highlight what I think is the most significant change that our monitoring team has experienced since being monitor. The new police chief is fully engaged in a way that is demonstrably different than prior experience. The chief anticipates issues, responds to issues and concerns, is totally transparent in our experience. And I would argue, based on our experience, the chief is a force for good and wants to achieve the requirements of the consent decree. The chief is not a proponent of an us versus them mentality. Oh, DOJ is doing this, the monitor's doing that. Sorry. She's focused on progress. I can't emphasize that any stronger, to be honest. With that, I think the way the program is set up is that I'm supposed to yield right now to the commission members. Is that right? And then, since it's their meeting, really, they take it from there, and I guess I come up, answer questions at some point.
Yeah, so we're going to start with any questions from the commissioners, and then we're going to transfer to questions from the community, and then I think then we break into small groups and do some readouts thereafter. So if that's okay, we'll start with commission questions and then jump into community.
Mic test, there we go. All right, you're up.
Hello, thank you so much for doing this event with us, and thanks to everybody who's here. My name is Chandra Benito, one of the commissioners, and I wanted to talk about ask some questions and bring some concerns about the crisis intervention part of the semi-annual report. So I think, as you've spoken about, it's one of the areas that is under assessment right now, and one of the areas that had some of the highest reviews of the semi-annual report. And one concern that me and some other commissioners and also some other folks in our community have been having is that I understand that you guys are evaluating compliance with the consent decree. However, the Department of Justice has started to take a different approach in how they are addressing the issue that was dealt, because I think as the Police Commission, we're concerned about the issues and the needs of the community. And so the issue that the consent decree was addressing in this section was response to people experiencing mental health crisis and experiencing mental health disabilities. So the Department of Justice is now taking a different approach when they create settlement agreements, and that can be seen in the Louisville and Minneapolis consent decrees, of not relying solely on a crisis intervention, the CIT model, and the Memphis model, but looking at a continuum of care. And there are groups in Cleveland that are doing that as well, as I know you guys are aware of, working with Angela Cece's in the Public Health Department. And I have some concerns about the way that the CIT and compliance with CIT is being held up as a model of compliance for the city, when that what is in the consent decree and what we're saying is fully successful is no longer what the approach of the Department of Justice is, and is actually being said to be potentially out of compliance with federal law. So I wanted to read a little bit from the Department of Justice and Department of Health and Human Services guidance for emergency responses to people with behavioral health or other disabilities. So what it says, in many jurisdictions, call centers that dispatch emergency responses can make reasonable modifications to their usual practices to afford equal opportunity to people with disabilities, including by sending a mobile crisis team or other responder rather than law enforcement in appropriate circumstances when a call involves a person with a behavioral health disability and there is no need for a law enforcement response. One of the things that this report says under what best practices should be are diversion to behavioral health services whenever appropriate, and specifically says that city jurisdictions should develop systems to divert appropriate 911 calls to these resources. So one of the things that in our consent decree, it mentions collaborating with other behavioral health resources, but there is not a diversion of 911 calls away from police response. And in the programs that are currently working to try to create that continuum of care in Cleveland, are getting pushback from the city because of citing concerns that it would pull us back in our compliance with the consent decree. Now, I have some real concerns about this, that I know that as a monitoring team, you said that you represent the consent decree. Well, I represent the police commission and the community police commission and the interest of the community. And so my concern is if the Department of Justice is saying that the best practice is to have calls sometimes be diverted from 911 when there is not a need for a police response, and the consent decree is being used to actually hinder us from following the best practices laid out in federal law, I have some concerns about that. And so I guess I'm wondering, what are you guys doing to make sure that we're A, following actual best practices as laid out by federal law, and B, how do we make sure that the consent decree isn't actually being used as a way to stifle progress in order to make the city look like it's accomplishing more?
Thanks a lot for the question. I think I got it now. Thank you very much for the question. My colleague is going to come in and probably answer things in more detail if you have CIT questions. But you raise a really, I think, excellent point. And to be sure, the monitoring team has had conversations with the Honorable Council Member Stephanie House Jones on a bill called Tanisha's Law that, not getting into the weeds here, would be more like what you are suggesting is the current best practice. The monitor doesn't weigh in on the legislation or how Clevelanders, should advocate for or against. That's between the community and their elected officials. There's always an opportunity to do better than a standard that was set in 2014 if the community decides collectively through the legislative process to require such. Example, there was a charter passed here not so long ago. That charter had some different aspects to it than existed in the prior, if you will, CPC. Adjustments were made in an appropriate way with the court in regards to changes. I think that's the extent of what I should say about that, respecting the community and the legislative process. Courtney, anything?
Yeah. Hi. Good to see you. The only thing I'll add is that, as Monitor Racine said, is that the consent decree is the consent decree, and that is what we're assessing compliance against. And so when we develop our tool, and by tool I mean the questions that we are asking ourselves when we review body-worn camera footage and field reports and all kinds of data that come in around a call for service, we're asking ourselves questions through a survey that we fill out that measures against the consent decree as written. And that's the nature of a consent decree in the settlement agreement, and that's what we've been tasked to do. So that is what the CIT assessment will cover. There are, of course, as you know, mobile crisis units and other aspects of CIT that are not directly getting assessed as part of the paragraph by paragraph provisions of the consent decree in the crisis intervention section of the decree. We're looking at every single one of those paragraphs. So to the extent that you're now thinking beyond what the consent decree says, it's a little bit of a scope question in terms of, well, now you're out of our scope as the monitoring team, and what we've been charged to do with the court, and what we've been charged to assess and report back to the court and the community. And that scope is for the parties to figure out, because the parties, the city and DOJ, negotiated that settlement agreement. And so we are quite bound by the scope of that agreement as it is, although I understand that, if you want to discuss and push scope, we're sort of out of that. That takes us out of the equation in terms of what our role is and what we've been tasked to do. And so that would all happen sort of outside of what we're doing with the current assessment.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the question. What time is it, real quick? I just want to get it, and Charles, we have until 8:15. What is it? Okay, all right. I just want to monitor it, for my own purposes. I can talk. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Racine.
How are you, Madam Commissioner?
Nice to see everyone again. I just have a question. I think it's a question that was basically asked last time. If you'll remember, there was a group of men that is associated with Mr. C's work, and they were just asking a broader question as to the gap between what is contained in this, very well put together report and what the community's experience is in policing. So before I ask my question, I do want to read paragraph 350 of the consent decree, just so everybody understands what the role of the monitor is according to the actual document. Paragraph 350 says the parties will jointly select an independent monitor who will assess and report whether the requirements of this agreement have been implemented and whether this implementation is resulting in constitutional and effective policing, professional treatment of individuals, and increased community trust of CDP. The monitor will work with parties to identify and address any barriers to compliance. So I'm asking because I want us to have the shared understanding that it's not, there is a kind of results-oriented part of this paragraph. It's saying that we have to have constitutional effective policing, professional treatment of individuals, and increased community trust. So this gets to my question, and I apologize if I'm challenging you a little bit, Mr. Racine.
You're good.
Thank you. So I want to also note that it has been my direct experience, and probably the experience of many people that have come to the commission, that there is a lot of conflict. And in two reports, both the 14th and 15th semi-annual report, it is characterized by the monitoring team thusly. The CPC continues to face internal divisions among its members, which lead to conflicts rendering the body at times unable to reach consensus on vital issues. Such divisions have occasionally created barriers to building internal trusting relationships, as well as impeded establishing the necessary external collaborative relationships needed for successful police reform in Cleveland. So that has been repeated twice in the report. However, I have to say that I nearly speak with a member of the monitoring team nearly every day. I've been on public record stating that infighting is an improper way to characterize what is happening on the commission and to alert the community as to the political interference of the city. And I would like to give you some data points to that effect. For example, you just said that largely the records requests by the commission have been fulfilled. And a very wise lawyer once told me to watch out when a lawyer uses an adverb because it lacks precision. This is not true. The commission has not received any of its requested disciplinary records. Mr. Johnson is here. I've spoken to him many times. I've spoken to Mark Griffin. These records are over 1 year, requests are over 1 year old. They've impeded the ability of the Police Accountability Committee from doing police accountability, which is a significant part of the consent decree and also probably the primary responsibility under issue 24. I want to also highlight that the commission has 8 times blocked the forward momentum of an appeal by our sole petitioner, Mr. Antoine Tolbert, leading to the fact that he was unprotected by the commission and rearrested on August 14th, 2024. You had mentioned in your interview for this job that you are willing to go into communities, and I believe it's sincere, and see what is actually happening. I hope that you will connect with Mr. Tolbert at a point in the future.
How was his last name spelled? Is it with the T at the end?
Tolbert, yes.
Okay.
He's also known as Chairman Fahim. So we see one data point that why would a group of people allegedly involved in infighting and personal disputes want to impede the progress of the sole case of a person that most of them do not know except for Ms. Jan Ridgway? That seems concerning to me. You also just said that the chief is totally transparent. I also beg to differ on that. On November,
I said in my experience,
in
the experience that we've dealt with the monitoring team, she has been nothing but fully transparent with us.
Okay, I understand, but our experience and the community's experience has been different. On November 24th, despite the fact that the DOJ has not approved the drone policy that the commission rushed through without community input, the chief launched a drone over protesters who were protesting and exercising their First Amendment rights and protesting the genocide in Palestine. So it gets me to my central point here, is that would the monitor team be willing to have a more accurate assessment of what is happening on the commission vis-a-vis the community? Because what the community and I have witnessed is active interference, active corruption, and no more indicated, and the exclusion of the community's voice, and no more indicated by the fact that both our recent drone policy and the disciplined GPO, which signals two of the most important, inarguably most important policies that the community would have experience with, that these two policies were rushed through, written by 2 people in both cases, 4 people, 2 for each, that both cases were not commissioners, rushed through the commission. So what I find ironic is that a commission created by the public has coordinated with the police on these issues without input from the community that created them. These policies should be promulgated, like all of the work of the commission, among the public, who then have the opportunity to comment on them in writing or in person, who can come to the commission if they want to appeal the police discipline case of any person. And it is obvious to me, therefore, that the commission has been captured by the very institutions it is charged to oversee. And what I'm asking is, why does the report not reflect this when I have kept, via Mr. C, and you and the investigation via Mr. C, completely every single email you've been CC'd on? I've provided all the documentation. I think it's time that we face the truth If we want to move forward, and all the mythologies that the media and other people have put forward about the internal fighting of the commission, you know, can we actually get to the truth? Because that is what is going to make progress in the community. That is what the community wants. And Mr. Racine, your team is getting paid $750 an hour.
We are.
You are. So I think this is one of the poorest communities in the nation. We would really like for progress to happen, and I think the community would agree that if progress did happen, you are absolutely worth $750 an hour. But what I'm asking you is, why is this document not matching the documented experience of the community members and of myself? Thank you.
Okay, now I wanted you the opportunity to answer. No, I want to give you an opportunity to answer.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I'm going to just try to hit a couple points that you made, and I'm sure I'm not going to hit all of them. And, you know, for that, I apologize. The first point that you raised was a concern around our characterization, not once, but twice, in our semi-annual reports, that the commission was experiencing infighting. That's our conclusion. After observing, listening, watching commission meetings, a commission member or two or three or four might disagree with that conclusion, which is their right. That is the independent monitor's conclusion, that this was far beyond normal dissent. Second, you mentioned the drone and the chief, and I think in a way you suggested that my characterization around transparency and what we've experienced is incorrect, and the drone incident is an example of how wrong we are. I don't know about you. I'm saying it to everybody. Anybody here make a mistake? That's right. Well, that's fair. And let me just say, what did the chief say? And I'm not here to defend the chief. I'm just saying that there was a written acknowledgement of what she did, and an acknowledgement of an error, and an acknowledgement of, and you can go test this, of the limitation that she placed on it. That's what she said, and others can have a different view. That's what I've observed. I don't think there's another point that you raised that I feel compelled right now to answer. And Charles, I think, wanted to.
No, only that we've got several commissioners that want to make statements. And so
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Charles, because to be honest with you, we're from a different city, like the local DC, not the federal DC. And the rule in the local DC is community always goes first. It's different here. So it's commission members. I do want to reserve the same amount of time for the community as the commission members if I could. That's 45 minutes according to my clock. And that time at 7:30 would yield to the community.
We can also take a break and come back.
Yeah, we can do anything.
I just also want to make one other clarification for everyone, because there was a comment made about the pay. I want to be clear that not everyone on the monitoring team makes $750 an hour. There are select people who do. And I also want to clarify for the people who do, we offer a 20% discount on that payment. So it equates to $600 an hour. For other monitoring team members, it's $230 an hour. And then there's also, one additional monitoring team member who charges $200 an hour. So I don't say that I just want to be clear because sometimes that gets confused for the record, and I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, thank you. Thanks, Abby. Okay, happy to take another question.
Okay, thank you for coming. Sections 317 and 318 of the consent decree discuss promotion practices. Those sections state that the promotion process needs to be fair and consistent. We aren't sure that that is always the case. Does the monitoring team evaluate whether CPD is adhering to the processes and requirements outlined for promotions, particularly for commander positions? And specifically, does your review include assessing whether the police commission is appropriately included in the promotion process as required? If not, what steps can we take to ensure that compliance happens in these cases? And John, did you want to add anything?
I guess the only thing I would add is like in paragraph 318, there are through A through H, which kind of identify the factors that should be considered when making a promotion. And so some of the things that are listed are like problem-solving skills and interpersonal skills, and they're in the consent decree. And as a monitor, I think what we would be asking is how can you help us to be able to consider A through H of paragraph 318, because some of them sometimes seem a little abstract.
We're just looking at the report to see exactly where it is. And it's kind of what the, no, that's the consent decree? Yeah, we're looking, what are you looking for? Thanks a lot. Appreciate that, Dr. Adams. Yeah. Thank you so much. So the question related to promotions, the question also related to the CPC's role in that as indicated or required by the charter. And let me just say a couple things. The commission plays a significant role, and the department effectively has to work with, present information to the commission, and the commission must assess and weigh in on those promotions. The most important, well, you can't do that if you don't have the documents. I think, as I indicated, documents are flowing. I'm aware of a question around certain documentation concerning, a recent promotion to an interim commander position. We think it's really important as a monitoring team for the commission as well as the city. After all, it's the city. Commission's asking the city to provide certain information. And it's got to be really, really clear in the transmission of what is requested, and it's got to be thorough and rigorous in terms of what is provided. We'd like to be a facilitator of that, and we're looking forward to facilitating that. Other question? Next question. Yeah.
If there's no more questions from commissioners, we can move now to community, and then we can open it up at the end if there's other questions. Oh, sorry, go ahead. We'll do one last question from the commission, and then we'll move to community.
Good evening. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I think that your assessment in terms of the ability of this commission to work together in order to accomplish what needs to be accomplished in terms of the consent decree, I think those assessments are quite accurate. These meetings have been contentious. These meetings have been meetings that were definitely, yeah, they have been, most definitely. And I'm not saying this as a commissioner only. I'm saying this as someone who gets telephone calls before I walk out the building from the public. I'm saying this as someone who walks into a public meeting and the first thing they say to me, why are you on this commission? Why are you on this commission? This isn't you. So this commission has been as contentious of any board, strategic committee, or commission I've ever served on, and I've been on over 20 in my lifetime. So those assessments were accurate. Now, that does not mean that there were some meetings, few, that there was no contention, but for the most part, these meetings have been contentious. So much so that I resigned because of that. I resigned because of that. And I have never walked away from any challenge if I thought it would benefit the community I live in. So I want to say to you that those assessments were quite accurate. They were quite accurate. And it didn't get better this second year. It got worse. And I need to say that for the record.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Of course, Commissioner Ridgway. You know, my mother used to always tell me, mother, 45 years, educator, that, hey, look, if the going gets tough, go talk to a librarian. And that's what Ms. Ridgway was. Okay. I think now we are ready to go to the community. We have Ms. Brenda Richardson with her hand up. Bickerstaff.
So here's what we're going to do, just for everyone's benefit. Let's do the two mics up here. I can walk around with the mics as well, if that might be. Victor, do you recommend doing that?
Line up behind the microphone.
Or you want people to? Okay.
Line up behind the microphones.
Okay. So just help yourself to either microphone, and we look forward to your questions.
Let me just say that, you know, again, I'm talking a little slow because I want to be accurate, and I actually am a little tired. You know, I know Brenda, and sorry about that mistake.
That's all right.
Okay.
No problem. Okay, so a couple of things I want to say. My brother Craig Bickerstaff, his birthday was just this past December the 1st. He got killed by police January 26, 2002. But not only did Craig get killed that year, Jermaine Sanders, Ricardo Mason, and Keith Moore back to back. Now, I want to make something clear to everybody in here. The $750, you know why it's so much? Because the DOJ was here several times before and told the Cleveland Police Department, correct this behavior, correct it. And guess what? They shunned it. They turned their nose up. They were cocky. Nobody's going to tell the Cleveland police what to do. And I had a dad that was a cop, and my sister won in Pittsburgh. So it's not that I hate the police. I just don't like the things that some of you guys do. Are all of you like that? Of course not. But I expect for the ones that know the ones that's corrupt to stand up and take a stand and say, I'm not going to allow you to unconstitutionally treat a person this way. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Everybody say, oh, Trump in office. They're going to do this. Be careful. Be careful. Because if you know that you're doing something wrong and Trump is encouraging you to do something wrong, you got a duty and an oath to step up and say, I'm not doing that. Because let me tell you something. I had a case that I was working on. I'm a private investigator. And it was a young lady that worked for CMHA. CMHA got busted. And so I asked the federal agent, well, why are you coming down on her? She was just a clerk. You know what he said? She knew she should have broke the law. So guess what? As the police, and you take that oath, I don't give a damn what Trump say. Don't you do it. You got a duty and an oath. I don't care if the chief tell you to do something wrong. I don't care if the white shirt tell you to do something wrong. Don't do it. Don't do it. So you wonder why it's $750 he's getting paid? It's just like a bad roof. When you keep patching it up and don't correct it, it's going to cave in. And it caved in with the 137 shots into Tamir Rice. My cousin, who's deceased, Mark Bickerstaff, told them to stop chasing those people. They ignored him because he was a black man in charge. They ignored him. I got the tapes. I got everything. That made him sick to his stomach. And I think that killed him. So let's don't go there. Now the next problem I got, they keep on violating this charter. Nothing personal with my judge, but he got a record against the LGBTQ people. He should not be in that position, but he's been promoted. He was supposed to go before the commission. And they bypassed him. And they said that he's interim. This is the second time, council, that they have violated this charter. They keep violating the charter. They flipping the bird. Now, I'm going to say this. Racine.
Yes, ma'am.
I want the judge to start putting these folks in jail. Now, that's what the public want to see. The judge has the authority. He's a federal judge. He's being a little bit too nice. And my patience have really ran with him. I have nothing personal against him. I understand he's trying to bring it together. Start putting these people in jail.
Thank you for your remarks. And obviously, they're born out of deep passion. And
excuse me, it's not about passion. It's the truth.
I wouldn't finish, Brenda.
And at the end of the day, Mr. Racine, they keep violating this charter. They keep playing with the language. We got two commanders that are in interim positions, because this is how they're playing it now. Well, we're going to make them interim. That's how they're getting them in. Bypassing the commission that was voted in by the public. 60% of the vote put them in these positions. So that's all I got to say.
I really appreciate that. You know how I feel about you and our team. And, I think it's fair, for the commission to ask, the monitoring team to ask questions about process related to promotions, including interim. I think it's really important for the community to be on its toes. I know around, yeah, thanks.
Next question here. We're going to alternate mics, one here and one here.
So, thank you. I know that the drones were mentioned and the illegal use of them. I was wondering if the monitor is going to do anything about the other countless misconduct cases that occurred at that exact same protest. I know that I, along with 4 other people, were detained and cited for basic, fundamentally, protected constitutional rights. I was on a megaphone giving a political speech, and that was enough for the cops to detain me and falsify the citation, claiming they had warned me multiple times. I was not the only one with a falsified police report. Other people were doing nothing other than political chants or hitting a drum, and not even loudly. It was about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Yeah.
Thank you very much, for what you said. And we're going to look at the consent decree and how it relates to those kinds of actions, allegations, experiences. I think it's also important to know, I really think this is important. The monitor is meant to be temporary. There are checks and balances that are existent now in the system. I get that we're up here and we're happy to be here for 2.5 hours taking questions. And I get that folks may want to bring a lot to us. Make sure that in addition to bringing it to us, that you familiarize yourself with and invoke the current checks and balances that are meant to have oversight over wrongdoing, by the police.
And hopefully,
Charles, got to go to the mic.
and hopefully, and those citizens who feel that wrongdoing has occurred, that they will file a complaint, because that's what we'll go take a look at. We want to go take a look at complaints that were filed, so we'll know exactly what we're looking for.
At the Office of Professional Standards.
Correct. Thank you very much. At the Office of Professional Standards.
Good afternoon. My name's Josiah Quarles. I am the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. Happy to be here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for all the questions and input from community. I too was at that protest, was surveilled, witnessed multiple citations that were unnecessarily written, lies told by police about notifications that were given, and the calling in of the Sheriff's Department, which has become a routine occurrence. In Cleveland, there were probably as many sheriffs there as there were protesters, and this is like, there's two parts here. So one is that I recognize the limitations of the consent decree and some of the errors in which it was written. So it's not actually governing policing in the city of Cleveland. It's governing the city of Cleveland police. And so therefore you have sheriffs who can act unconstitutionally. You have CMHA police who can act unconstitutionally. You have CMHA police who can act under metro parks. You have hospital police and all of that. So I'd like to raise that, one, to recognize for community the gaps in the system, but also to CPC, how can we work together to close those gaps? And to the point that was brought up earlier about crisis intervention, I mean, we are far behind the curve here of other places in establishing a continuum of care. And from what I have heard in response to Councilwoman House's proposal, as well as many organizers and advocates like myself who have been pushing for care response in our community for years now, the consent decree has consistently been used as leverage against that process, with the prospect that, we'll be reset to zero. So I would encourage the monitoring team as well as the DOJ to be very careful with their language when we're speaking about these sorts of things, because the potential benefit to the actual fulfillment of the consent decree would be highly increased if we reduce the call volumes for homelessness, for behavioral health, for all of these things, right? The response times will be better. The outcomes will be better, both for those who end up with police and those who are able to be served without police. So it is a very important piece for our community. I sit on the MRAC board, which was built out of the consent decree, and I have been fighting this battle of whether we can do that work, and I've constantly been pushed back, and I'm fine doing that work outside of that container, but what I'm not fine with is the consent decree being leveraged against community members fighting for the needs of community.
Sir, I didn't log in the name because I'd like to know your name. Very much appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Oh, was he done? You done? Mr. Racine, were you finished responding?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Kayla Pincus. Thank you guys for being here. So I've spent most of my adult life working on understanding how the lines are narrated between the concept of us and them in different contexts. And I brought that to my work, like as a mitigation investigator, certainly it's very prominent, right? Who are we and who are they and how do we tell that story? You mentioned that earlier about, the importance of not looking at this as an us versus them. I think that that's very important, but when I got involved in this in the first place, it was really important to me to figure out who was seeing what lines here, how are different people kind of constructing who are we and who are they and in what ways, before I even started speaking about anything, to make sure that I felt like I was coming with my own understanding of those dynamics. I think that one of the things that is really important is to not look at it as a biased perspective, to advocate passionately and extremely strongly for the law, right? Like that is an okay us, right? And people who violate the law, when we're talking about systems, I think is an okay them. Maybe individuals is more complicated, like as a mitigation, specialist, it's a little bit complex. But when it comes to systems, I think that it doesn't need to be looked at as biased or partial to be an extraordinarily strong advocate against people who seek to stop systemic progress. I think that's what's required. So just to comment on that. My question basically evolves around how we understand as a community our relationship with the Department of Justice, actually. And, I understand that you guys are this neutral entity to some extent, actually, I'm sorry, I had another thought. It just has to do, the kind of finishing of the thought regarding the us versus them stuff, is that we're not necessarily just, the us is not necessarily the commission. The us is not necessarily the police. The us is not necessarily commissioners individually, this sort of thing. And it's important, I think, that we're constantly, understanding our compass around that issue. But sorry, I just wanted to make sure I finished that thought. About the DOJ, how do we communicate with the people who are supposed to be the party advocating for constitutional policing, right? So there's a one-way stream that we can do, right? We can email them, kind of, but they seem to not be able to speak back to us, which is in part understandable. But we seem to only be able to communicate with you guys, and even you guys are very limited in your response to us. Since I've been involved in this work, there's been so much emphasis around the community. The word is used constantly. To me, it's almost become a joke. And so my question is, from a very practical level, and I will stop in just a second, but on a very practical level, a very practical question is, how can the community truly engage and communicate with the entities involved to make sure that we are actually saying this is what our community wants, and perhaps the consent decree needs to be amended, to include things that the community wants. If we can't get you guys that information and also have access to that information. I have had a lot of access to certain information, but a lot of it is due to the whims of people who, when they want to share it, which is not a great approach for anybody involved. And it also means that if I end up speaking out against somebody's behavior, that stream of information gets cut off. And that's not fair for anybody. Thank you. Okay, sorry, thanks.
I appreciate the comments, particularly around us v. them. And the question was, how do you communicate with the Department of Justice? I would hate to put Jackson on the spot, but, you know, DOJ is here. So, you know, ask them. And DOJ, ask them. Okay, next.
Wait a minute, before we get our next question, we've got quite a few people that are in, so I would ask you to be concise in your questions, and we'll have time to take this off for some of the longer statements.
Charles, when is it that you want to go to the table portion of this session?
What time is it now?
It is now 7:30.
7:30. I say another 10, 15 minutes. We won't take this off the session. But so I would ask
Okay.
I would ask you to be concise in your questions, so we can give the respondent an opportunity to.
May I ask, well, that's power to the people on that one.
Okay. Yes, hi, my name is Marva Patterson. I am a Christian community activist, been out here for, wow, over 20 years, helping our community to at least bring some kind of justice. And I mean some kind of justice, because when you look at transparency, I don't see it. Because when we file complaints, we get no answer back. And I always try to take an opportunity to speak about the Rebeccas and their case, because the Rebeccas were abused by the police and they have felonies that are false. But no one has really stepped up to say, let us look at this case to see actually what's happened here. These individuals can't get jobs. The young Rebecca has 3 children right now. It's very hard for her. She's struggling. The mother had a good job and housing. And then when this occurred, housing was stripped from them and she lost her job because of it. But it's been quite a long time and they need justice. And again, when we talk about transparency, we have to dig deep and take a look at the wrongs that's done to people, because it's something that manifests throughout their life. And we need conclusions. But we can continue to talk about these things, but if there's no actual action behind it and actual individuals that are taken to task, it will continue. And I will say this, we filed, the judge was Daniel Gall. We filed down in Columbus. It took over 15 years for them to finally do something, but 15 years. Look at the fallout behind that. So I'm just saying, we're all sitting here today. We hear all of the stories. We know the pain that people have endured. But if we don't actually take action and actually be transparent about the wrongs that's happening, our children will be in these rooms talking about the same thing. And I do not want to stand and see that. Our ancestors fought hard for us to have the freedoms we have today, and we can't even get along. So that's failure. If you cannot get along with each other, you failed. If you can't sit next to somebody and work it out, you failed. We will fail our children. So I'm just saying, I'm tired of it. A friend of mine said, Marva, I've had enough. We need to tell the truth. So I'm saying this today. I want some justice for the Rebeccas. I want justice for all those that have been harmed, because we need to discuss this. And as a Christian woman, I feel so ashamed. Because where's the love? I don't see it. When Brenda was speaking, she's speaking from her heart. She's speaking from a place of pain. We have to understand that and identify it. So I'm just saying today, people, we better get on this, because your grandchildren will be here if we don't deal with this now. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing, not a word that I personally disagree with.
All right, you know who I am. And I'm the infamous and the blunt person. And I really will have no problem if Mr. Racing, you are the one getting $750 per hour. However, for all your expertise, how much do you really know Cleveland politics? To really understand everything happening here, to divide the commissioners and to divide the community members is because of the local politics. How much do you know that? How would you be able to incorporate that into the actual work you guys are supposed to do? Right now, in the community, what a laughing, joking, Kayla already mentioned, in the so-called community, we do not really see your presence. I'm talking about the whole monitoring team. Even we have the hardworking members locally, but lots of the issue will not get addressed publicly until we have a meeting like this. And how often can we have the meeting? So please do not suppress us talking on the microphone. Put us talking on the tables will not resolve the issue. I will quote the previous lady's words. Do we want our children in the same community talking about the same thing 15 years later for the same issue? We don't. We need a change now. And you better come here more often. So people will think that $750 is worthwhile to have you here to watch out why we still have all these mistakes and people trying to cover up to get the people go against the community and make community silent. That is the issue. Don't forget, Josiah Quirrell just said the real situation. Why, among the commissioners, the first priority categories, still nobody's sitting on that table. It's only the secondary people. For example, even homeless people apply. Do we get an interview? But only the people serving homeless community from whatever organization getting sit on the seat. So, do we really follow the spirit enough to do the actual work? Or we just want to make everything look nice? Let's just talk nice. Oh, we are getting along. Sorry, getting along is not the issue. Getting the things done is the issue. Don't fail our officers either. Their career is because they want to be in the community to raise their family, to have their children growing up here. Do you want them to sit here to get blamed 15 years later for the things they have never really get trained for? Same problem. So please, I would suggest decrease the table or work time to let more people actually speak up. This is what we actually need. Yes, the truth may be ugly, but if we don't dig out all these negatives, how will we be able to turn things into positives? Remember, the good, the bad, ugly, it's not only for Clint Eastwood, it's for all of us. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lurleen Romine. I have a nonprofit called Stop Rape, Stop Crime, Help People. I started coming to the commissioners' meetings back in the summertime, August, somewhere along there, and I stayed in touch as much as I could, but it was so many cancellations of meetings that I couldn't stay in touch. I couldn't be connected. And more people want to be connected, but we need the commissioners to reach out to them, to reach out to me and say, Lurleen, we need you at this meeting. We're speaking up on your behalf or on this behalf. We need that to happen. I could bring 25 people here from my organization, but with all those cancellations, it was a joke. It seems like a big joke. And what Brenda said, that's the heart of our community. What Terry said, that's reasoning, that's the basics, that's what we need, okay? And the solution is this. All these policemen, they have a code of silence. So all the bad things they do, they keep it under wraps. Because if they speak up, they're gonna pay hell on their own. We need to say we're gonna stand by them. You officers, DOJ, you guys need to say you're gonna stand by these policemen when they speak up on the wrongdoing. And what it's gonna take is every 10 officers, they have a sergeant. that sergeant need to be accountable for each and every one of their actions. And then that sergeant's leader, lieutenant, he need to be accountable for that sergeant to make sure that the information is being received to him and stopped. You know, this is how it's gonna all start. It's gonna start with a different culture, and it's gonna have to start with accountability. Please, let's get that part of this consent decree. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me the time to speak today. There are a couple things that have been said by the monitoring team today that I find pretty concerning. The first is related to how infighting is talked about on the commission, and also about the idea of local checks and balances, filing complaints, things along those lines. So anyone who has watched a commission meeting, it's very obvious there is infighting. It isn't really saying anything to say there's infighting. The question is, what is the fighting about? What is the content? What is the context? What is the information? Like, what are the reasons these conflicts are coming up? Because we are in a situation where people continue to bring up issues related to police and nothing is really changing. And so, of course, there's going to be conflict. If you are trying to make something happen and things are not happening, that's inevitably going to lead to conflict. That should be the thing that is discussed in this report, rather than just saying there is infighting. What are people fighting about? And if you look into what people are fighting about, you get to the answer of why are people not filing complaints. Because I started coming to the commission meetings in January, and what I saw was a petitioner, Antoine Tolbert, bring a complaint in February 1st. That complaint was supposed to be followed up with an initial analysis within 15 days. That did not happen. That was followed up by 8 incredibly conflict-ridden meetings related to that complaint, which up until this point, it is still stalled. Things are not moving forward on that. The one complaint that is actually going to be moving towards a hearing, nothing has really moved forward with it. And then there is serious concerns related to retaliation. My organization participated in a Juneteenth celebration with Antoine Tolbert, where we were given a bunch of false citations that were not defended in court. As was mentioned with the November 24th rally, people were given citations for using megahorns, for using drums. I was told we were going to be cited for just being in the streets. Just marching in the street, we were going to be cited for that. And when we look at what is happening to Antoine Tolbert, it is pretty obvious why people are not filing these complaints. You have the one petitioner at the commission not have his complaint followed up with. He has showed up multiple times. Last time he went to a commission, he explicitly said, "I do not trust that you all will ever move forward with this." So, and you are saying that we need to be relying on these local checks and balances. And that is to say nothing about the current situation. Like, it goes even further than that. There is further, what I would argue, retaliation against Antoine Tolbert, who was arrested on August 14th. There's an allegation that he held a gas station hostage for 3 hours, and there's an upcoming Brady motion for his criminal case, and the complaint being brought forward, the motion being brought forward, is saying that those 3 hours of the alleged hostage situation, that footage does not exist. It was not preserved by the state, even though there is a police report saying that footage exists. So my question to you is, why are you directing us towards these local checks and balances when they are so thoroughly discredited, and what can the federal monitor do about this?
I appreciate your question. I really do. My point about the checks and balances that exist doesn't mean that I know firsthand or believe that they are not without problems. My point was to simply emphasize that the monitor and the authority of the monitor is limited to the consent decree. And that the monitor, though the monitors, my predecessors, have been here for 10 plus, it's not intended to be that way. And so at the end of the day, it's incredibly important for your advocacy to continue towards making those checks and balances work. I think that's all I can say. I do appreciate what you're saying, and I did write down the date that you spoke of around Mr. Tolbert, and I am quite interested in understanding more about all of that. And so I would ask,
I am very happy to talk with you.
I would ask that that you, if you could, please share your contact information.
All right, will do.
Thank you.
Okay, so a question. In your number 4, complete findings regarding community engagement and building trust. Okay, so I'm part of the community. Let's talk about some trust. Our police force does not look like Cleveland. Cleveland is predominantly Black Americans. CPD is not predominantly Black Americans. The gender that dominates the city of Cleveland are women. Women do not dominate Cleveland Police Department. So when we're talking about building trust, how do we have the sense of believing trust is there when I don't see women and minority, Black men or Black women, or anybody else moving up the ladder? When I look at our deputy chiefs, they don't look like the community. There's a few, but I have a problem. We have a whole Hispanic community, and they continue to have a white commander. Bothered by it, bothered by it. And it irks me when you guys say you guys are achieving community engagement when part of the community is looking like the community. In order to go into the community and talk to the community, you have to be about the community. You have to look like the community. I'm not listening to anybody that don't look like me. I will honor what they're saying, but I'm not really hearing them. And we have an issue with juveniles in the city of Cleveland that are kind of cutting up. But there is no money being put in by CPD or the city. Being put in the city to help. We have a bigger issue, and so my question is, when you guys came up with this and said that it was the complete findings and that, you gave some suggestions, but what about that? There are things to build morale. Police officers also serve in the military. How many districts honor minorities and women in the military? They honored the others, but they didn't honor women, especially. So that is the question I would like an answer at some point. But when we're building engagement in the community, as the community, we want to see more engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Let me just say this. I think that getting the best talent means all. And that when it's not all, by definition, it's not the best talent. And when there are systems in place, intentional, cultural, otherwise, that result in that kind of visible skewing, that's not the best. I work as a lawyer, I worked at law firms. They got problems big time too. So I hear what you're saying.
Thank you. The monitor has heard the community's request to forego the table talk and continue the dialogue, and has has decided to do that, so he will continue to engage with your questions and with your observations.
Mr. C does invite you over to his home where he has a table, and we can follow up with that another night.
Nobody works harder on the monitoring team than Mr. C. My name's Rosie Palfy, and some of you know me. I was on the Mental Health Response Advisory Committee that was created under the consent decree for 8 years, from 2015 to 2022, and I am done. Mr. Racine, thank you for coming, but with all due respect, first of all, I'm going to some people may get upset with me, and
okay.
I apologize in advance. First, I want to thank the men and women who are protecting and serving, and I'm glad to see there's a table full of officers here. You talk about the community, and basically what I'm hearing, I hear from the running joke is I know they work hard, but the running joke is that it's the police unaccountability team that the city created. So I'm hearing you're saying a lot, like nothing with a lot of words. You're talking about the community. There are 4 community members here who applied to be on the police commission: Black, white, and Asian. Only one of them got an interview. It's shocking. And you know what? All of them have been involved in either the police commission or their district policing committee. So make it make sense. Do you want community members who've actually read the consent decree to be involved or not? I mean, it just does not make sense. So if you're those 4 people, why would you continue to be involved? Especially if you make public comments, you attend these meetings, you send emails, they get ignored. It's just ridiculous. And for 8 years, well, I guess it's 10 now almost, I raised my concerns about crisis intervention. And because the police are doing good, they're checking the boxes, hey, we've got other things that are more pressing. What you don't understand is the city's doing a lot of great work. The problem is they're still working in silos. So you've got Cleveland City Council members taking initiative, doing something really great. The problem is all of these pieces aren't working together. And the city is moving towards a care response model. And guess what? They are saying, no, we don't need the commission involved. We don't need the community involved because the police aren't going to be involved. Well, 911 is involved when people call to get a care response. And the consent decree specifically says that the Mental Health Response Advisory Committee is supposed to work with the city to create telecommunications crisis training. You can't tell me that there's never going to be a call that a care response team goes to and police isn't needed. Maybe it wasn't appropriate for a care response. So this notion that these are different things is just, it's outrageous. The crisis intervention training for next year is going to be, wait for it, officer wellness, okay? Cities that aren't under consent decrees do officer wellness training. I was part of writing the training maybe 6 years ago, where 2 hours of the 4 hours were about officer wellness. If the city and the police department really care about their officers, they will do 4 hours of officer wellness training on their own. And, there are still, I'm a veteran and I previously experienced homelessness, and I can tell you this, the city still has not done CIT training on vulnerable populations like the elderly and veterans. And nationwide, somewhere between 20 and 25% of police officers and dispatchers served in the military. So that is something else that is important to keep in mind when they keep continuing to kick the can down the road and not do training about veterans in crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think there was a question.
No.
Oh, so sorry.
I was waiting to see if it was a rebuttal, so I.
Okay. No, you know you're good.
Okay. My name is Daryl Houston, and I started paying attention to this about 6 months ago. And a lot of things have stuck out to me in these 6 months on all parties' behalf. I do want to clarify a few things. When you said consent decree and you guys are just here for consent decree, I don't think a lot of people are understanding that part.
You're right.
Okay? You're here because you have a specific issues to pay attention to, okay? The Cleveland Police Department, I call it food for thought. We've had 2 police chiefs, we've had 2 safety directors, okay, in all this transition. In the 6 months that I've been paying attention, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate my monitoring team. I appreciate my police officers, okay? And I appreciate the city. I appreciate my city council. But what I've been paying attention to, if we have no accountability. Accountability is the key component to everything that we're trying to do. Holding people accountable, policies and procedures. I'm a victim of being wrongfully imprisoned on a 33-life sentence, okay? And I'm strict on law, policies, and procedures, okay? If we stick to law, policies, and procedures, you will always prevail. The law and policies and procedures are undefeated. And to my constituents over here that had any complaints with any officers, any city council members, any monitoring team, it's called processes. You have to go through the processes even to get to the DOJ. And that's what the monitoring team sounds like they were trying to utter to us, to say, follow the steps that we're supposed to do locally. Challenge your police chief, challenge your city council, challenge your mayor, challenge anybody that chose to be elected to be in these positions to represent us, okay? Nobody is representing us. We're all human beings in this room. We're all navigating in the same community, okay? So we have to get away from, I'll use the word gerrymandering, and it's gerrymandering in all departments, okay? If you're a supervisor, supervise. Don't be a person's friend. He's here to do a job, she's here to do a job. Hold them accountable. If they can't fulfill their job obligations, remove them, okay? And I'm a little frustrated with my community. I want to get on my community back because they don't seem to come out and they don't seem to exercise their constitutional rights in the way that they should. That's my biggest gripe, okay? You have, if you're receiving things that you feel is unfair, you have to challenge the system, okay? Because the system works because I'm standing here. It's not about black and white because I'm a young black man that was given a 33-life sentence. But the same system that locked me up is the same system that freed me. So don't tell me that the system don't work. It's the people that's in place in these entities that's holding all of us back. And I suggest you go home and you do some soul searching and think, can I be that person to take that person's seat? Can I be that person to make this difference? Because I don't think it's one human being in here that wants to fail. Nobody wakes up to fail, okay? And it's important as human beings of all different nationalities, of all different backgrounds, that we get it. Because if we don't hold to this democracy, everybody, it's gonna be a day in time to where you wish you did something. I can promise y'all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, I'm humbled.
Yes.
When I heard you. I heard you speak. Very humble. To Ms. Bickerstaff, to Ms. Ridgway, to my sister right here. I'm humbled when I hear you all speak. To our police officers, I know you live in this city. take care of us. I appreciate you. To the monitoring team, you know, we talk about that $700, $200, whatever it is. We can stop that. We have the power to stop that if we do what this gentleman just said. Do the work. They're here because the work is not done. That's the problem. So we can crowd about 700. A workman is worthy of his hire. I go to work, I want to be paid. So if you don't want me to work, you relieve me of my job. You give me a pink slip. That pink slip is, we do our job. And when I heard the young man say that our police commission, when they try to do what's right, they run into not the fact that what the person is saying is right or wrong, but the person is taking over the entire meeting. I watch it from home. Listeners call me and say, what is going on? We can stop them from being paid, but we can't stop them if we don't do what this gentleman just said. Man, you bless me. 8 years, 6 months, 24 days, and 6 hours. See, and I had to go through the process so they could leave me alone. Are you listening to me? And they said, I'll never amount to anything. I run a radio station. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
So I'm trying to say, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate everybody that has spoke. He left something in me that says, don't settle for where you are, do something. Thank you, man.
Did you want to comment or?
No, I don't think there was a question. I clapped.
Okay, all right. I'd like to say something that I think people need to hear. My name is David Patterson. My wife Marva, we've been married for 33 years. And we've both been Christian community activists for 25 of those years. I am also an ex-president of a union local, represented CMHA workers, 400 of them. And if anybody's ever done union work, it's like 400 children, but that's another story. I want to say about a year ago, I did something that I thought was necessary. I submitted to the Copyright Office a word which is a modification of an existing word that I think represents the word racism better than racism. And the word is hubris, but it's H-U-E-B-R-I-S. It is the arrogance of skin color, because racism doesn't really define it. It's the arrogance within it. That's what we're fighting. And so I think people need to know you have to define what you're dealing with in order to rectify it. And so I just wanted to put that out there. That's number one. The second thing I wanted to say was that, and I know some of this is conjecture and some of it really isn't, there has been extensive angst in the community, both here locally and nationally, surrounding the pronouncements of the incoming presidential administration concerning the elimination of consent decrees nationwide. I think this is something we all need to focus in on, because what's happening now is they're trying to stifle everything we've done in the last 10 or 15 years. Also with that, the incoming administration is looking to inject the total immunity of police officers. Not qualified, total. We have to fight this tooth and nail every day, every moment of every day, because just as this young man said here, it's not about systems. It's about people interjecting their morality or lack thereof in these systems. That's why we're here. And that's what's got to change. We cannot stop, ever. Anybody here that thinks that you have time to breathe, you do not. We have to do this every moment of every day because there are people right now that need us. There are people generations down the road that are going to need us, and it starts here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I make a comment on something that was alluded to before that you brought home, and that is what happens to the consent decree when a president doesn't favor them. The consent decree settlement is in the federal court in the hands of Judge Oliver. Unless and until the law is that a president of the United States can override a federal judge. I don't want to speak for Judge Oliver. It's going to be in Judge Oliver's court. And Judge Oliver has consistently said, and I hear you on, Brenda, I hear you when you emphasize accountability as other people have. The road there to greater accountability starts with having hearings. Judge Oliver is going to see this through. And as he always says, I'm not going until substantial compliance has been demonstrated, not a day before, and I won't be here, the monitor won't be here a day after.
Good evening. Thank you, monitors, for being here. We appreciate it. My name is Richard Jackson. You guys probably know I've been around for quite some time, 30 years as a Cleveland police officer, and quite a bit more, longer than that, being in the family of police officers, father, brother, and then me. So that being said, I have a huge history of what's been happening here in the Cleveland Division of Police, here in Cleveland, born and raised here. 1972, the Black Shield filed its lawsuit, which finally came to fruition in 1977, for which 90% of the black officers that you've seen on the job and all the old timers, that's how they came on the job, was because of that. That one lawsuit here in Cleveland expanded and grew out from there to other cities and more and more and more. So that's how you started to see not just black officers, Hispanic and women, females were allowed to come on the police department being sworn in, full-time police officers. All of that started right there in 1972 and 77. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that there was also, and I'm sure the DOJ knows this, there was also another consent decree well before 2000 that was one where the federal government made the city of Cleveland start having some sort of process for use of force. And that was back in the 70s. And a lot of people didn't even realize it. And then, of course, in 2000, they made us to start at least having a reporting system. Because prior to 2000, we didn't have reports for use of force. You just did it. It was in the body of the report, but there was no title for it, so you could never go back and look for it. A lot of these things were happening because of the DOJ coming in and great people like you all to come in to help. And so now that you're here, we're asking you to please, as the eyes and ears of the judge, please use the power of the bench, ask the judge to use the power of the bench to correct some misbehavior or maybe mistake by the city, because there is a current interpretation now that the city has the right to bring in any police organization. And if they're allowed to do that, once that door is open, and I can tell you in my 50 years of experience here, once it happens here in Cleveland, that door never gets closed. And the reason why that is so important is because the consent decree that you guys are protecting says Black Shield, CPPA, FOP. If currently the city is now trying to get Noble in there, and I don't mind Noble because I sit on the executive board of Noble, but I do understand this. Cleveland problems do really need Cleveland solutions. A good friend told me that. And the thing here is the reason why Black Shield, CBPA, FOP were written into it is because we're here, boots on the ground. We're here actually understanding what's going on inside the department. We're here with understanding what's happening in the streets that we've lived in and grew up in. And then to have Noble, which, again, like I said, I sit on the executive board, but they're coming from all different areas. And once you allow that door to open, before you know it, you'll have a police chief from Canton coming in here. They don't know what's going on here in Cleveland. But because you've opened that door once, you've set precedent. And we're asking that you guys please use the power of the bench now and shut that down. Because once that door is open, we won't ever get it closed again. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, thank you very much for your experience, your family's experience, and those comments. Abby Wilhelm is going to address a part of what you raised.
If I may, really briefly, I just I want to acknowledge a point that you raised because I understood it. I don't know if everyone in the room really heard it because it references paragraph 16 of the consent decree. And if I am permitted, can I just take a moment to read that for everyone's benefit? Okay. The CPC will be broadly representative of Cleveland's diverse communities. Members will be appointed and vacancies will be filled in accordance with the city's charter. Until at least 7 members are appointed pursuant to the provisions of the charter, however, CPC members currently serving will continue to carry out CPC's duty. That was prior to the initial vacancies being filled. Moving forward. Throughout the pendency of this agreement, the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, and the Black Shield will each recommend 1 qualified member to be appointed to serve on the commission. The commission will meet periodically with the chief of police, and then it goes on. So you were referencing that particular point, I believe, in the consent decree that asked for those recommendations from those 3 associations. I just want to acknowledge that this was brought to the monitoring team's attention, that there's, by Kayla Pincus. I don't know if I pronounced your last name correctly. I'm pronouncing it as I read it. But we have lawyers examining it right now and have looked at it as recently as today to analyze how that does or does not conflict with the charter, right? Because the two are separate and we need to examine them together. So I can't at this stage tell you about our analysis, but do want you to know that we've inquired with the city about its selection process and we're looking at it. So
if I could say one more thing about that, also in your amended consent decree from 2023, I believe, after you allowed for the change of the institute of the IG, there's language in there that says that the city shall follow the charter for to fill its vacancies. And what the city is doing is to take one part of the paragraph, one part of the sentence, because the sentence says police associations, comma, and then it goes off into a description of police labor organizations. So as I understand it, the city is saying, well, it says police association. Therefore, we're going to go with any police association, which is allowing their usage of Noble. And again, like I said, Noble serves a great thing for all communities, and I sit on the executive board of Noble, but we cannot open the door to allow national associations to come into Cleveland. That's just something that can't happen. So thank you for your answer. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may just make one more broad statement, this is, you may go back to your seat. I'm just going to broadly talk about this for everyone's benefit. We also put in the 15th Semiannual report that we were anticipating vacancies and that there would be a process underway that we would need to examine in this reporting period. So you will see the monitoring team's analysis as to whether the city complied with those paragraphs in the consent decree that relate to the commission vacancies. And I just want to bring that to everyone's attention that will also be forthcoming.
Let me top off that really thorough explanation and recital with a couple other points. After receiving the community complaint, reading the newspapers and the like, we presented the city with questions. Please explain your rationale for interpreting the consent decree and charter in the manner in which you apparently have. They set it forth. The Department of Justice also asked questions. We're analyzing it, so is the Department of Justice. And as Abby indicated, we'll let folks know what our analysis demonstrates. Yeah. I just want to, I don't think we have another union rep here other than Manny of the Hispanic police officers.
Mr. Jackson's from the Black Shield, he's here.
My bad. Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Jackson. I didn't, you were out of my sphere. Let me just say, both Mr. Jackson and Manny, we meet when we're here, and I very much appreciate their advocacy, their position, their questions, and I definitively appreciate your attendance. Thank you. What's that? Okay. All right. When you reach the final lap or the third lap of 4, you're supposed to pass the baton to the final runner. And so we are passing the baton back to Dr. Adams and the commission. Thank you for inviting us as your guest. So sorry.
Can we just use the mic then? The other one?
Hello, okay. I want to say thank you to all the community members that came out, the DOJ, the monitoring team, everyone from the city, my fellow members on the commission. And we've decided as co-chairs and our leadership team on the commission to just give out a few, to recognize the work that was done on the commission. I know it's been difficult. We've had a lot of resistance, but I do want to acknowledge that there were, when we sat down at the table, we had great intentions and we worked really hard. So I want to, the first 2 people that I want to acknowledge and give recognition to is Adriana Rodriguez, who is not here, but I will make sure she gets this award, and Jan Ridgway. I want to give them the Foundational Leadership Award. So I present this award to them as they were the first co-chairs who stepped into the position after the passing of Issue 24 and had the task of implementing Charter 115.5. Adriana and Jan faced significant challenges navigating resistance with resilience, and their leadership set the foundation for the commission's work. John and I have learned so much from their example, and I have felt their incredible support as co-chairs following in their footsteps. So I would like to give the Foundational Leadership Award to Jan Ridgway.
Okay, so I'm not going to make an acceptance speech, but I do want to say this. Because I'm leaving does not mean I won't stay engaged. We are in the process of developing a community academy. We want to go back and look at community organizing. We want to invite the community in. We want to go back to the Constitution. We want to reclaim democratic principles. And we want a community that's engaged, that will even challenge the work of the police commission, challenge the work of every elected organization in the city of Cleveland. And I've heard a lot of you speak tonight. We need to move out of our silos. We need to learn how to work together through community organizing, and we're hoping to be able to launch something by midsummer. So we hope those of you who have spoken tonight would be willing to step up to the plate and join us in having your voice heard across the city. Thank you.
Okay, so on the behalf of the Cleveland Community Police Commission, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the outgoing commissioners and the commissioners who have completed their 2-year terms. Your hard work and commitment to the city of Cleveland have been invaluable, and your contributions have helped to advance our mission in many ways. So as you move on to your next chapters, we wish you all the best on your future endeavors. So not everyone is here. If you are here, you can come up and get an award. If not, I'll make sure you get your certificate. Gregory Reeves, Pastor Kyle Early, Commissioner Kate Kennedy, Commissioner Charles Donaldson, Commissioner Chandra Benito, Commissioner Terry Wong. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Alana Garrett Ferguson. Mine is in my book bag somewhere.
Were you done?
Oh yeah, there's one more thing. We're gonna Commissioner Benito, she's gonna hand out a few awards to community members who have served on our work groups. So these awards are going to recognize community volunteers who have dedicated their time and energy to the Cleveland Community Police Commission's work groups. Your commitment to this work has been instrumental in moving our mission forward and fostering meaningful change. Through your service, you have shown what true community engagement looks like, helping to build the foundation for accountability, equity, and progress. We are deeply grateful for your dedication and proud to present you with these Community Service Award as a token of our appreciation.
Yes, I want to echo what Commissioner Zayed said, which, you know, we are supposed to be here. We were selected and made a commitment, and we also do receive some compensation, but really the heart of the work is done by our community members who are not receiving that, who don't always get the credit, who show up even with all the other things that they do. And so we want to recognize the great work that they've done, starting with Sergeant Richard Jackson. Richard, thank you for not only your prior service to the commission, but also in continuing to push the work forward. Yeah, yeah, thank you. Also, we want to recognize Kayla Pincus. Kayla works really hard to not only give thought-provoking and pushback and accountability of the commission, but has also spent countless hours working on policies and has been instrumental, along with Richard Jackson, in getting our corrective action policy passed. So thank you. We also wanted to recognize Rosie Palfy for her many years of service to the commission and to crisis intervention and advocating on behalf of people experiencing mental illness and homelessness. This commission wouldn't be the same without you. through the name. And then we have some other folks that are not here, but we just want to recognize their work. We have John Martin, who was part of the Surveillance Technology Work Group, Brian Ray, also part of the Surveillance Technology Work Group, Tanisha Fair from the same work group, Lou Katz, and Gordon Freeman, Jonathan Whitmer-Rich, Gary Daniels, and Dave Lima, who all have given great service and advocacy, and so we're very grateful for their work, and we'll make sure they get these certificates.
Just the final comment here. I think that sometimes leadership is always hard, and oftentimes not recognized. Ms. Zayed and Dr. Adams, monitoring team appreciate your leadership. We also know how many hours you work. We know it's Saturday, Sunday, and late and early on weekdays. Thank you.
You have surveys on your table. Please fill out your surveys and make sure you sign in for your attendance sheets. I've got to go. Thank you so much for coming this evening, and we appreciate you. And police reform is not for the faint of heart, so you have seen this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, travel safe. God bless. Thank you.